In the ticking heart of Temporal Hall, where every clock counts the seconds to a chilling crime, a man vanishes, leaving only blood, a stopped clock, and a cry in the night. Who betrayed Sir Reginald Ashford, his elegant wife, hiding a secret, the brash industrialist with a grudge, the young heiress who saw too much, or the silent solicitor with a locked briefcase? Hercule Poirot, the master of logic, steps into a maze of lies, where time itself is the key to a shocking truth. Will you unravel the mystery before the final chime? Listen, as the clocks tick toward justice in this Agatha Christie-styled tale of murder and deception. Chapter 1. The Gathering at Temporal Hallowe'en, the waning days of October. Under a sky heavy with the promise of rain, Temporal Hall stood resolute, its ivy-clad walls whispering of secrets and grandeur. The estate, nestled in the heart of the Kentish countryside, was a monument to precision, its clocks ticking in unison across every room, their chimes a symphony of order. Sir Reginald Ashford, the reclusive horologist and master of Temporal Hall, had invited a select group to his annual gathering, a curious assembly of friends, rivals, and strangers, all bound by his peculiar obsession with time. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion to Hercule Poirot, found himself among the guests, his invitation a surprise even to himself. Sir Reginald, a man of meticulous habits, had extended the courtesy through a mutual acquaintance, citing Hastings' reputation for discretion and his association with the famed Belgian detective. Hastings, ever susceptible to the allure of a country weekend, accepted with a mixture of curiosity and unease. The air of Temporal Hall felt charged, as though the very ticking of its clocks counted down to something inevitable. The drawing-room, where the guests assembled on that first evening, was a study in opulence and precision. A grand chandelier cast a warm glow over mahogany furniture, and the mantelpiece bore a clock so intricate it seemed to pulse with life. Sir Reginald, a wiry man with sharp eyes and a habit of adjusting his pocket-watch, greeted each guest with a nod, his smile polite but distant. His wife, Lady Evelyn Ashford, moved among them with the grace of a hostess long accustomed to masking. Her weariness, her beauty, though faded by time, still drew admiring glances, particularly from Mr. Victor Crane, a brash industrialist whose fortune in clockwork mechanisms rivaled Sir Reginald's own. Miss Clara Beaumont, a young heiress with a penchant for astronomy, fidgeted with her necklace, her eyes darting to the clock above the fireplace. Beside her stood Dr. Lionel Hurst, a physician whose nervous demeanor belied his professional calm, his fingers tapping in a regular rhythm against his glass. Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth, a widowed authoress of Gothic novels, observed the room with a writer's keen eye, her notebook never far from hand. Finally, there was Mr. Julian Marsh, a solicitor with a reputation for discretion, whose presence seemed to unsettle Sir Reginald more than the others. The conversation, initially light, took on a strained quality as the evening progressed. Sir Reginald spoke at length about his latest acquisition, a rare chronometer said to have been crafted for a French king, its gears so precise they could measure time to the millisecond. Time, he declared, his voice sharp, is the only currency that matters. Waste it, and you waste your life. His guests nodded politely, though Hastings noted a flicker of unease in Lady Evelyn's eyes. As the clock struck 9, a sudden chill seemed to settle over the room. The fire crackled, but the warmth failed to dispel the growing tension. Hastings, seated near the window, caught a glimpse of movement outside, a shadow, perhaps, or merely the sway of branches in the wind. He dismissed it, but the unease lingered. Sir Reginald, ever attentive, noticed Hastings' distraction and inquired with a raised brow, "Captain Hastings, you seem preoccupied. Is the country air not to your liking?" "Oh, quite the contrary," Hastings replied, forcing a smile. "It's merely the grandeur of your home, Sir Reginald. One feels the weight of time here." Sir Reginald's laugh was curt, indeed, and time, Captain, reveals all truths. The evening wore on, punctuated by the relentless ticking of clocks. Lady Evelyn excused herself briefly, returning with a pallor that did not escape Hastings' notice. Mr. Crane, emboldened by wine, began to boast of his latest business venture, a factory producing affordable timepieces for the masses. "The future, Ashford," he said, pointing a finger, "lies in democratizing time, not hoarding it in gilded cases." Sir Reginald's smile tightened. "A noble sentiment, Crane, but precision is not so easily masked." Miss Beaumont interjected, her voice soft but firm. "Surely, Sir Reginald, time belongs to no one. It moves whether we measure it or not." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Dr. Hurst coughed, breaking the tension, and suggested a toast to their host. Glasses were raised, but Hastings noted the reluctance in Julian Marsh's movements, as though the solicitor were weighing some unspoken burden. As the guests retired to their rooms, Hastings lingered, drawn to the library where Sir Reginald's collection of timepieces was displayed. Each clock, from the ornate to the austere, seemed to watch him, their faces glowing faintly in the moonlight. He was startled by a soft footfall behind him, Mrs. Wentworth, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Captain Hastings," she murmured, "do you not find it curious that Sir Reginald invites such an eclectic group? I sense a story here, one that may not end happily." Hastings chuckled, though her words struck a chord. "You see mysteries everywhere, Mrs. Wentworth, perhaps," she replied, her smile enigmatic. "But in a house full of clocks, one cannot help but feel that time is running out." The night deepened, and Temporal Hall grew quiet, save for the ceaseless ticking. Hastings, lying awake in his guest room, could not shake the feeling that something was amiss. The clocks, so precise, seemed to mock the fragility of human affairs. He thought of Poirot, his friend and mentor, whose absence felt like a missing piece in a puzzle. Surely, he mused, Poirot would see through the polished veneer of this gathering to the truth beneath. As he drifted toward sleep, a distant sound, muffled cry, perhaps, or the creak of a floorboard jerked him awake. He sat up, heart pounding, and glanced at the bedside clock. It was precisely 2:17 a.m. The house was silent once more, but the echo of that sound lingered, a harbinger of the chaos to come. In the morning, Temporal Hall would awaken to a crime. That would summon Hercule Poirot, the master of order, to unravel the tangled threads of time and deceit. For now, the clocks ticked on, each second a step closer to the inevitable. Chapter 2. The stroke of midnight. The morning broke over Temporal Hall with a deceptive calm, the mist curling round the estate like a shroud. Captain Hastings, roused by the insistent chime of a clock at precisely 7 a.m., felt the weight of the previous night's unease lingering in his bones. He dressed quickly, his military precision at odds with the disquiet that gnawed at him. The muffled cry he had heard or imagined in the small hours had left a mark, and he resolved to mention it to Sir Reginald over breakfast. The dining room was a study in elegance, its long tables set with silver and porcelain, the air fragrant with coffee and freshly baked scones, yet the atmosphere was strained, the guests' faces betraying a collective tension. Sir Reginald, seated at the head, was absent, his chair conspicuously empty. Lady Evelyn, her composure fraying at the edges, explained that her husband had not yet risen, a rarity, she noted, given his obsession with punctuality. "Sir Reginald is never late," she said, her voice tight. "He sets his watch by the Greenwich signal each morning. I sent a maid to check, but she found his room empty." Hastings exchanged a glance with Miss Clara Beaumont, whose brow furrowed in concern. Mr. Victor Crane, ever boisterous, dismissed the matter with a wave. "The man's probably tinkering with one of his blasted clocks. He'll turn up when he's good and ready." But Dr. Lionel Hurst, his fingers twitching nervously, was less dismissive. "It's unlike him," he murmured. "Sir Reginald's habits are metronomic." Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth, her notebook open beside her plate, scribbled something, her eyes darting between the guests. "Perhaps," she said softly, "he has been detained by something or someone." The words hung in the air, their implication chilling. Hastings, sensing the need for action, suggested a search of the house. The guests agreed, though Mr. Julian Marsh, the solicitor, seemed reluctant, his face pale as he adjusted his cuff. They divided into pairs, with Hastings and Miss Beaumont assigned to the upper floors, while Crane and Hurst took the ground level, and Lady Evelyn and Mrs. Wentworth searched the gardens. Temporal Hall, with its labyrinthine corridors and countless clocks, felt like a living entity, each tick a pulse in the silence. Hastings and Miss Beaumont moved through the guest wings, checking rooms that echoed with the absence of their master. It was in Sir Reginald's study, however, that they found the first sign of calamity. The room was a shrine to horology, its walls lined with timepieces of every era, pendulums, cuckoos, and delicate pocket watches encased in glass. At the center stood Sir Reginald's desk, its surface cluttered with papers and a single, stopped clock, its hands frozen at 12:03. Hastings' heart sank as he noticed a smear of red on the desk's edge. Blood. unmistakable and fresh. "Miss Beaumont," he said, his voice low. "Fetch the others, quickly." She nodded, her face pale, and hurried from the room. Moments later, the group assembled, their expressions a mix of shock and suspicion. Lady Evelyn, upon seeing the blood, let out a stifled cry, clutching Dr. Hurst's arm for support. Crane, his bravado faltering, muttered something about vandals. While Mrs. Wentworth's pen moved furiously across her notebook, it was Julian Marsh who spoke first, his voice steady but strained. "We must assume the worst. Sir Reginald may be harmed. We should search the grounds and call the police." Hastings, his mind racing, agreed but insisted on preserving the scene. "We must touch nothing," he said, his tone firm. "This is a matter for expertise. I know just the man for the job." Within the hour, a telegram was dispatched to London, summoning Hercule Poirot. The local constable, a well-meaning but bumbling man named Sergeant Brooks, arrived first, his notepad already filled with hasty scribbles. He surveyed the study, declared the blood troubling, and began questioning the guests with a zeal that bordered on accusatory. Hastings, watching the proceedings, felt a pang of relief at the thought of Poirot's imminent arrival. The constable's methods were too blunt, too prone to missing the subtleties that Poirot's little grey cells would seize upon. As they awaited Poirot, the guests gathered in the drawing-room, the clock's relentless ticking a grim reminder of the missing host. Sergeant Brooks, with little tact, pressed each for their movements the previous night. Lady Evelyn admitted to retiring early, claiming a headache, though her trembling hands suggested more. Crane boasted of a late-night cigar in the billiard-room, alone. Miss Beaumont said she had been stargazing from her balcony until midnight, a claim Dr. Hurst corroborated, saying he had seen her silhouette from his window. Mrs. Wentworth, ever observant, said she had been writing in her room, though she admitted to stepping out briefly to clear her thoughts. Marsh, the solicitor, was vague, saying only that he had been about until retiring at 11:30. Hastings, when questioned, mentioned the cry he had heard at 2:17 a.m., a detail that drew sharp looks from the others. "A cry," Brooks repeated, scribbling furiously. "And you did nothing?" "I wasn't certain," Hastings replied, bristling. "It was faint, possibly a dream." The constable's suspicions were interrupted by the arrival of a sleek black car, its occupant unmistakable even from a distance. Hercule Poirot stepped out, his small, neat figure immaculate in a tailored suit, his mustache waxed to perfection. His eyes, sharp and green, surveyed Temporal Hall with a quiet intensity, as though the house itself were a suspect. "Mon ami Hastings," Poirot exclaimed, clasping his friend's hand, "you find yourself in the midst of a mystery, n'est-ce pas? And what is this talk of blood and missing hosts?" Hastings quickly recounted the morning's events, leading Poirot to the study. The detective moved with deliberate care, his gaze lingering on the stopped clock, the smear of blood, and the papers scattered across the desk. He knelt, examining the floor, and retrieved a small object, a broken watch fob. Its chain snapped, as though torn in a struggle. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, holding the fob to the light. "This is no accident, Hastings." The clock stopped at 12:03. The blood, the fob all speak of a crime most deliberate. He turned to the assembled guests, who had followed him to the study, their faces a gallery of apprehension. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot said, his voice calm but commanding. "Sir Reginald Ashford is missing, and this room suggests foul play. I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth. But I warn you, time, it reveals all, and I shall be its interpreter." The clocks of Temporal Hall ticked on, each second a challenge to Poirot's genius. Somewhere, hidden in the shadows of motive and opportunity, lay the truth about Sir Reginald's fate, and Poirot, with his methodical mind, was already setting the gears of justice in motion. Chapter 3. The arrival of Hercule Poirot. The clocks of Temporal Hall seemed to pause in reverence as Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his presence a quiet force amid the chaos of suspicion. The room, with its blood-smeared desk and stopped clock, held the guests in a thrall of unease, their eyes darting between the detective and the ominous evidence before them. Captain Hastings, standing near the door, felt a familiar surge of confidence at Poirot's arrival. The Belgian's meticulous nature, so often mocked by the uninitiated, was precisely what this tangled affair required. Poirot, his hands clasped behind his back, surveyed the room with the precision of a watchmaker. His gaze lingered on the stopped clock, its hands frozen at 12:03, then moved to the broken watch fob in his gloved hand. "This," he said, holding it aloft, "is a clue most significant. A fob does not break itself, Nan. It speaks of struggle, of haste, perhaps of desperation." Sergeant Brooks, hovering nearby with his notepad, coughed awkwardly. "Begging your pardon, Mr. Poirot, but it could have just fallen off. Sir Reginald was always fiddling with his watches." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign Hastings recognized as mild exasperation. "Monsieur le Sergeant, Hercule Poirot does not deal in could-have. The facts, they must be precise. This fob was torn, and the blood on the deskit is fresh. We are not in the realm of accidents." Lady Evelyn, pale and trembling, spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "But where is Reginald? If there was a struggle, surely we would have heard something." Poirot turned to her, his eyes softening, but not without scrutiny. "Madame, the house is large, and the night is silent, save for these clocks. And yet, Captain Hastings, he hears a cry at 2:17. Nescp. We must consider all possibilities." Hastings nodded, recounting the faint sound that had jolted him awake. Poirot listened intently, his head tilted as though the words themselves were pieces of a puzzle. "Bourne," he said at last, "we shall begin with the facts. I must see the rooms of each guest, and I must know their movements last night. Precision, mise Amos, is the key to truth." The guests, though reluctant, agreed to Poirot's request. Sergeant Brooks, eager to assert his authority, insisted on accompanying the detective, but Poirot waved him off with a polite but firm gesture. "You, Monsieur Brooks, will ensure the study remains untouched. Hastings, you will assist me." They began with Sir Reginald's private quarters, a suite at the end of the east wing. The room was as orderly as one might expect from a man obsessed with time. A four-poster bed stood neatly made, its covers undisturbed. A dressing table held a collection of pocket watches, each aligned with military precision. Poirot examined them closely, noting their settings all synchronized to the second, save one. A small silver watch stopped at 11:58. "Curio," murmured, his fingers tracing the watch's edge. "This one, it is out of step with its brothers." "Why?" Hastings, peering over his shoulder, ventured a guess. "Perhaps it broke." Poirot shook his head. "Nan, mon ami. A watch of this quality does not simply break. It was stopped, deliberately or otherwise. We shall see." Next, they moved to Lady Evelyn's room, where a faint scent of lavender lingered. Her wardrobe was impeccable, but Poirot's attention was drawn to a small writing desk, its surface cluttered with letters. One, partially crumpled, bore the initials J.M. Julian Marsh, the solicitor. Poirot tucked it into his pocket without comment, his expression unreadable. The other guests' rooms yielded further insights. In Mr. Victor Crane's quarters, a half-smoked cigar lay discarded in an ashtray, its ash scattered, as though dropped in haste. Miss Clara Beaumont's room held a telescope by the window, its lens pointed toward the night sky, corroborating her claim of stargazing. Dr. Lionel Hurst's room was a study in disarray, with medical journals strewn about and a vial of sedative. On the nightstand, its label smudged, Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth's room, by contrast, was tidy, her notebook filled with cryptic observations about the other guests. Poirot lingered over a page that read, "Crane's ambition outstrips his dangerous." Julian Marsh's room was the last, and here Poirot paused longest. A briefcase, locked but scratched, sat beneath the bed. Poirot, with a deft touch, examined the lock but did not attempt to open it. "This man," he said to Hastings, "he hides something. The solicitor, he is always discreet, but this discretion is too perfect." As they returned to the drawing-room, the guests awaited, their faces a gallery of apprehension. Poirot, standing before the fireplace, addressed them with his characteristic calm. "Madame et messieurs, I have seen much, but I must know more. Each of you will recount your movements from dinner until this morning. Omit nothing, for the smallest detail may be the key." Lady Evelyn spoke first, her voice steady despite her pallor. "She had retired at 10 p.m., she said, and slept fitfully, hearing nothing unusual. Crane claimed to have lingered in the billiard room until 11:30, smoking and reading. Miss Beaumont reiterated her stargazing, noting the clear sky and a particularly bright Venus. Dr. Hurst admitted to pacing his room, unable to sleep due to professional concerns. Mrs. Wentworth described her late-night writing, though she confessed to stepping into the corridor around midnight to stretch her legs. Marsh, his voice clipped, said he had reviewed legal documents until 11:30 and then slept. Poirot listened, his eyes never leaving the speaker's face. When they finished, he nodded slowly. Merci, but I observe a discrepancy. The clock in the study, it stops at 12:03, yet none of you admit to being near the study at that hour. Curious, Nan. Sergeant Brooks, hovering nearby, interjected. Maybe the clock was wrong. Old houses, old clocks, things go awry. Poirot's smile was thin. Monsieur, a clock in Sir Reginald's care does not go awry. It was stopped, deliberately, to mark a moment. And that moment, it is the heart of our mystery. As the guests shifted uncomfortably, Poirot's gaze settled on the broken watch fob, now resting on the mantel. This fob, he said, it belonged to Sir Reginald. Yet, it is found in the study, torn. I ask myself, who was with him at 12:03? And why does the blood speak of violence? A gasp escaped Miss Beaumont, and Lady Evelyn's hand flew to her throat. Crane muttered something unintelligible, while Hurst's fingers resumed their nervous tapping. Mrs. Wentworth's pen paused, her eyes gleaming with interest. Marsh alone remained still, his face a mask. Poirot clapped his hands, breaking the tension. Enough for now. I, Hercule Poirot, will retire to reflect. But know this, the truth, it hides in the shadows of your words, and I shall find it. As the guests dispersed, Hastings followed Poirot to the library, where the detective sat, his eyes half closed, his fingers steepled. Hastings, he said softly, this house, it is a clockwork of deception. Each tick, each tock, brings us closer to the truth. But we must be patient, for the gears of justice turn slowly. Outside, the clocks of Temporal Hall continued their relentless march, each chime a reminder that time, as Poirot had said, reveals all. Chapter 4. The questions begin. The late morning sun cast long shadows across the parquet floors of Temporal Hall, its light doing little to dispel the chill that had settled over the house. Hercule Poirot, seated in the library with Captain Hastings at his side, prepared to unravel the threads of the mystery that clung to the estate like cobwebs. The blood in the study, the stopped clock at 12:03, and the broken watch fob were pieces of a puzzle, and Poirot's little grey cells were already at work, sorting and arranging them with meticulous care. The guests, summoned one by one to the library, entered with varying degrees of trepidation. Poirot had chosen the room deliberately, its walls lined with Sir Reginald's timepieces, their relentless ticking a subtle pressure on the nerves. Sergeant Brooks, relegated to guarding the study, grumbled but complied, leaving Poirot free to conduct his interviews without interruption. Hastings, armed with a notebook, recorded each detail, though he knew Poirot's memory needed no such aid. First to face the detective was Lady Evelyn Ashford. She entered with the poise of a woman accustomed to scrutiny, but her hands betrayed her, twisting a lace handkerchief into knots. Poirot, his voice gentle but probing, began. Madame, you say you retired at 10 o'clock last night. You heard nothing, saw nothing, until the morning. Lady Evelyn nodded, her eyes fixed on a point above Poirot's shoulder. Yes, Monsieur Poirot. I had a headache, and took a sedative. I slept deeply, or so I thought. Poirot's moustache twitched. A sedative, you say? From Dr. Hurst? Perhaps. Her cheeks flushed. No, from my own supply. I sometimes need help to rest. Poirot made a small non-committal sound, his gaze lingering on the crumpled letter in his pocket. Initialed J. And your husband, madame, did he seem troubled last night? Perhaps a disagreement with one of the guests. Lady Evelyn's lips tightened. Reginald was always particular, especially about his clocks. He and Mr. Crane argued, as you heard, but it was nothing unusual. Reginald disliked Crane's commercial approach. Bon, Poirot said, dismissing her with a nod. Merci, madame. We shall speak again. Next came Mr. Victor Crane, his broad frame filling the doorway. His bluster was undimmed, but Poirot noted a flicker of unease in his eyes. Monsieur Crane, Poirot began, you were in the billiard room until 11:30, smoking a cigar. Alone? Crane nodded, his jaw set. That's right. I like my own company after dinner. Nothing wrong with that, Nan. Indeed, Poirot replied smoothly. But the cigar in your room, it was half-smoked, dropped in haste, perhaps, and the ash, it was scattered. A man of your confidence, he does not drop things carelessly. Crane's laugh was forced. You're reading too much into it, Poirot. I was tired, that's all. Poirot's eyes narrowed. and Sir Reginald Duke argued about his clocks, his passion. Did this argument, perhaps, continue later? Crane bristled. If you're accusing me of something, say it plain. I went to bed and stayed there. Poirot smiled faintly, gesturing for Crane to leave. For now, monsieur, that is all. Miss Clara Beaumont followed, her delicate features drawn with worry. She sat stiffly, her hands clasped in her lap. Mademoiselle Poirot said, "You were stargazing until midnight. A beautiful pursuit, Nan. And Dr. Hurst, he confirms, seeing you on your balcony. Yet I wonder what did the stars tell you last night?" Clara's eyes widened. "Nothing, Monsieur Poirot. I was observing Venus. It was particularly bright, and the cry Captain Hastings heard at 2:17. Poirot pressed. "You heard nothing, though your room is near the study." She shook her head, her necklace glinting as she moved. "I was asleep by then. The night was quiet." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft. "And Sir Reginald, did he share your interest in the heavens, or was his gaze fixed only on his clocks?" Clara hesitated, then said, "He was kind to me, always asking about my studies, but he was distant, consumed by his work." Poirot nodded, dismissing her. Dr. Lionel Hurst entered next, his nervous energy palpable. His fingers tapped a staccato rhythm on the arm of his chair. As Poirot began, "Doctor, you saw Mademoiselle Beaumont on her balcony. A fortunate observation, Nan, and your own movement spacing, you said, due to professional concerns." Hurst nodded jerkily. "Yes, I couldn't sleep. I often can't. My work, it weighs on me." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And the sedative in your room, monsieur, do you prescribe such things to others here? To Lady Evelyn, perhaps?" Hurst's face paled. I may have advised her once or twice. It's common enough." "Common, oui, but significant," Poirot murmured, noting the doctor's discomfort. "And Sir Reginald, did he consult you about his health?" Hurst shook his head. He was fit, obsessive about routine. He needed no doctor. Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth was next, her keen eyes meeting Poirot's with a spark of challenge. "Madame Wentworth," Poirot said, "you are a writer, an observer of human nature. Your notebook, it is filled with thoughts about this house, these people. What did you see last night, when you stepped into the corridor at midnight?" Mrs. Wentworth's smile was wry. "You're perceptive, Monsieur Poirot. I saw nothing unusual, just shadows and clocks. But I felt tension, as though the house were holding its breath." Poirot tilted his head. "And Sir Reginald, did you sense such tension in him?" She hesitated, then said, "He was a man under pressure, though he hid it well. His clocks were his world, but worlds can be fragile." Finally, Mr. Julian Marsh entered, his composure a stark contrast to the other's unease. Poirot studied him closely, the locked briefcase in his room a lingering question. "Monsieur Marsh," Poirot said, "you reviewed documents until 11:30, then slept, yet I find you guarded. You knew Sir Reginald well, Nan." Marsh's expression remained neutral. As his solicitor, yes, our business was private, but not contentious. Poirot held up the crumpled letter with the initials J.M.M. "This letter, found in Lady Evelyn's room, it bears your initials. A private matter, perhaps." Marsh's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Poirot pressed on. "And the briefcase in your room, monsieur, it is locked. What does it contain?" "Client papers," Marsh said curtly. "Confidential." Poirot nodded, his smile enigmatic. "Very well. For now, you may go." As the interviews concluded, Poirot turned to Hastings, his eyes gleaming. "Mon ami, each tells a story, but not the whole story. The alibis, they are too neat, like the clocks of this house. And yet, the stopped clock at 12:03, the blood, the farb, they cry out for truth." Hastings frowned. "But Poirot, where is Sir Reginald? Is he dead?" Poirot's expression grew solemn. "That, Hastings, we shall discover. But first, I must examine this house more closely. The study, the clocks, the shadows, they hold the key." As they stepped into the corridor, the clocks of Temporal Hall chimed noon, their sound a relentless reminder that time was both ally and adversary. Poirot, undaunted, moved toward the study, his mind already tracing the delicate gears of motive and opportunity. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The clocks of Temporal Hall struck 1 o'clock, their chimes echoing through the corridors like a call to order. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the mounting tension among the guests, had returned to the study. where the blood-smeared desk and stopped clock at 12:03 held court. Captain Hastings followed, his notebook filled with the guests' alibis, though he sensed that Poirot was already several steps ahead, his little grey cells weaving connections invisible to others. Sergeant Brooks, stationed at the study door, greeted them with a scowl. "Mr. Poirot, I've had word from the village. No sign of Sir Reginald, and the groundskeepers report nothing unusual. I'm thinking Mr. Crane's our man. His argument with Sir Reginald last night was heated, and that cigar ash in his room looks suspicious." Poirot's moustache twitched with mild amusement. "Monsieur le Sergeant, you were quick to point the finger, Nan, but Hercule Poirot does not leap to conclusions. The ash, it is suggestive, but it is not proof. We must dig deeper." Brooks bristled but stepped aside, allowing Poirot to re-examine the study. The detective moved with deliberate care, his gloved hands tracing the desk's edge where the blood had dried into a dark crescent. He paused at the stopped clock, its hands frozen at 12:03, and tapped its face lightly. "This clock," he murmured, "it is the heart of the matter. Why stop it? To mark a moment, or to mislead?" Hastings, peering over his shoulder, ventured, "Could it have been an accident, Poirot? A struggle, perhaps, and the clock was knocked?" Poirot shook his head. "Non, mon ami. In this house, a clock does not stop by chance. Sir Reginald, he was a man of precision. This was deliberate a message, or a deception." Their inspection was interrupted by a commotion in the hall. Lady Evelyn, her composure fraying, burst into the study, followed by a red-faced Sergeant Brooks. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped, "we've found something in the garden shed. You must come at once." Poirot and Hastings followed her too. The rear of the estate, where a small weathered shed stood amid rosebushes, inside, illuminated by a single lantern, lay a bloodied handkerchief, its monogram R.A. clearly visible. Beside it was a gardening trowel, its blade stained with what appeared to be blood. The guests, gathered at a cautious distance, murmured in shock. Sergeant Brooks seized the moment. "This clinches it. Crane was out here last night, smoking his cigar. Groundskeeper saw him near the garden at 11:45. He's our man Poirot." Crane, overhearing, stormed forward, his face thunderous. "That's nonsense. I smoked in the billiard room, not the garden. The groundskeeper's mistaken." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the uproar. "Calm yourselves, Mies Amos. This handkerchief, this trowel, they are clues. But they are not the whole story. Monsieur Crane, you say you were not in the garden, yet the ash in your room, it was scattered, as though dropped in haste. Explain this, s'il vous plaît." Crane's bluster faltered. I may have stepped outside briefly, for air, I swear, I never went near the shed." Poirot's eyes narrowed, but he turned to the handkerchief, examining its folds. "The blood, it is fresh, like that in the study, and the monogram are a Sir Reginald's, without doubt, but why leave it here, so easily found? It is too convenient." Nan, Miss Clara Beaumont, standing nearby, shivered. "It's ghastly. Does this mean Sir Reginald is dead?" Poirot's expression was unreadable. "That, mademoiselle, we cannot yet say, but I observed that the shed is far from the house, yet close to the path leading to the village, a place to hide something or someone." Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth, her notebook ever present, scribbled furiously. "Monsieur P," she said, "this feels like a Gothic tale. A handkerchief, a trowel, a missing man. It's almost theatrical." Poirot's smile was faint. "Indeed, madame, and in a play, the props are chosen with care. We must ask, who placed these props, and why?" As they returned to the house, Brooks pulled Poirot aside, his voice low. "I'm telling you, Poirot, Crane's our man. He's got motive. Everyone heard him arguing with Sir Reginald about those clocks, and he's got no solid alibi after 11:30. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Motive, but motive alone is not enough. We must consider all the players in this drama. Tell me, Monsieur Brooks, have you searched the grounds thoroughly?" Brooks admitted the search had been cursory, focused on the house. Poirot clapped his hands. "Then we shall organize a proper search, with method and order. Hastings, you will assist." The afternoon was spent combing the estate, from the manicured lawns to the dense woods beyond. The guests, under Poirot's watchful eye, joined the effort, though their enthusiasm varied. Dr. Lionel Hurst moved sluggishly, his eyes darting nervously, while Julian Marsh maintained his cool reserve, staying close to Lady Evelyn. Miss Beaumont, paired with Mrs. Wentworth, seemed distracted, her gaze often drifting to the sky. As the search yielded nothing, no body, no further clues, Poirot gathered the group in the drawing-room. "Madame et messieurs," he said, "we have found much, and yet nothing. The handkerchief, the trowel, they point to violence, but they also point to misdirection. Someone wishes us to believe the obvious, to suspect Monsieur Crane, but Hercule Poirot, he is not so easily led." Crane, red-faced, muttered his thanks, but Poirot's gaze swept over the others. "Each of you has a secret, a reason to wish Sir Reginald harm. Lady Evelyn, your marriage was not without strain. Mademoiselle Beaumont, your interest in Sir Reginald was perhaps more than academic. Dr. Hurst, your nerves betray a burden. Madame Wentworth, your observations are too keen for mere curiosity. And Monsieur Marsh, your locked briefcase, it speaks of hidden truths." The guests shifted uncomfortably, their alibis now tinged with doubt. Hastings, watching Poirot, marveled at his friend's ability to unsettle with a mere glance. "But Poirot," he whispered, "what about the cry I heard at 2:17? It doesn't fit with the clock at 12:03. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Precisement, mon ami. The cry, the clock, the blood, they are notes in a symphony, but the score is incomplete. We must listen closely." As the clocks chimed 4, Poirot announced his intention to revisit the study alone. "The truth," he said, "lies in the details, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall find them." The guests dispersed, their whispers trailing. Like smoke, Hastings, lingering, felt the weight of the mystery deepen. The handkerchief, the trowel, Crane's cigar ash, they were red herrings, perhaps, but they pointed to a truth just out of reach, and Poirot, with his unerring logic, was closing in on it, one tick of the clock at a time. Chapter 6, A Clue in Detail. The clocks of Temporal Hall ticked toward evening, their relentless rhythm a counterpoint to the growing unease that permeated the estate. Hercule Poirot, having dismissed the guests after the fruitless search, returned to the study, his steps measured, his eyes alight with purpose. Captain Hastings followed, sensing that his friend was on the cusp of uncovering something pivotal. The blood-smeared desk, the stopped clock at 12:03, and the broken watch fob had already woven a tapestry of suspicion. But Poirot sought the single thread that would unravel it. The study was as they had left it, the air heavy with the scent of polished wood and something faintly metallic, blood perhaps, or the memory of it. Poirot stood before the desk, his gloved hands clasped, his gaze fixed on the clock. "This clock, Hastings," he said softly, "it is the key. Why stop it at 12:03? To mark the moment of a crime, or to mislead us about when it occurred?" Hastings frowned, his mind grappling with the possibilities. "But Poirot, the cry I heard was at 2:17. If the crime happened at 12:03, what was that sound?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of satisfaction. "Precisement, mon ami, the discrepancy. It is deliberate. Let us examine this clock more closely." He lifted the clock, a heavy, ornate piece with a brass face, and turned it over. His fingers traced the back, where a small panel concealed the mechanism. With a deft movement, he opened it, revealing a tangle of gears. Among them, caught in the teeth of a cog, was a single strand of dark thread, fine and nearly invisible. Poirot extracted it with tweezers, holding it to the light. "Regard us, Hastings," he said, his voice low. "A thread, caught where it should not be. This clock was tampered with, and this thread, it belongs to someone who was here." Hastings peered at the thread, its dark hue unremarkable. "It could be from anyone's clothing, Poirot. How can you be sure it's significant?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Because, mon ami, in the house of Sir Reginald, nothing is accidental. This thread, it is out of place, like a note played off-key. We shall compare it to the garments of our suspects." Leaving the study, Poirot summoned the housekeeper, Mrs. Grayson, a stern woman whose loyalty to Sir Reginald was matched only by her disdain for disorder. "Madame," Poirot said, "I require access to the guests' wardrobes, a small matter of fabric, you understand." Mrs. Grayson hesitated, her lips pursed, but Poirot's charm was irresistible. She led them to the guest rooms, where Poirot examined each wardrobe with meticulous care. In Lady Evelyn's closet, he found a navy silk dress, with a frayed hem, its threads a close match to the one from the clock. In Mr. Victor Crane's room, a dark wool coat bore similar fibers, though less frayed. Miss Clara Beaumont's wardrobe held a black shawl, its edges worn but intact, Dr. Lionel Hurst's tweed jacket showed signs of wear, and Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth's writing cape had a loose seam. Only Julian Marsh's wardrobe, impeccably tailored, showed no obvious match, though Poirot lingered over a pair of black gloves, their stitching pristine. Returning to the library, Poirot spread the thread on a table, comparing it under a magnifying glass. "It is silk, Hastings," he said. "Fine, like that of Lady Evelyn's dress, or perhaps Mr. Crane's coat lining, but we must be certain. The laboratory in London will confirm." Hastings, puzzled, asked, "But why tamper with the clock?" "To make us think the crime happened at 12:03. Poirot nodded. Or to hide the true time. The cry you heard at 2:17, it suggests the crime, or some part of it, occurred later. The clock at 12:03 is a lie, a stage set for our benefit." As they pondered this, a soft knock interrupted. Miss Clara Beaumont stood at the door, her face pale. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling, "I must speak with you, alone." Hastings stepped outside, though his curiosity burned. Inside, Clara clasped her hands, her eyes darting to the clocks. "I lied," she whispered. "Last night, I wasn't only stargazing. I went to the study around 11:45 to borrow a book on celestial navigation. Sir Reginald was there, alive, working on his chronometer. He seemed agitated, muttering about betrayal." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And you told no one, mademoiselle?" "Why?" Clara's voice broke. "I was afraid. If someone hurt him, they might think I saw something. But I swear, I left him alive." Poirot studied her, his expression unreadable. "And this agitation, what did he say, precisely?" She hesitated. "Something about time running out, and a debt unpaid." "I didn't understand." Poirot dismissed her gently, but his mind was racing. "Hastings," he said as his friend returned, "Mademoiselle Beaumont has given us a piece of the puzzle. Sir Reginald was alive at 11:45, yet the clock stops at 12:03. The thread, it suggests someone tampered with it shortly after, but the cry at 2:17, it complicates the timeline." Hastings rubbed his temples. "It's a muddle, Poirot could. There would be two events, a struggle at 12:03, and something else at 2:17. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Excitement. We are dealing with a crime in layers, like the gears of a clock. We must peel them back, one by one." He rose, moving to the window, where the fading light cast Temporal Hall in shadow. "Let us return to the study. There is another detail I must examine, the papers on the desk. They, too, may speak." In the study, Poirot sifted through the scattered documents, most of which were notes on clock mechanisms, but one sheet, tucked beneath a ledger, caught his Argyle letter, unsigned, but written in a precise hand. "You cannot keep time still. Pay what you owe, or it ends." The ink was fresh, the paper crisp. Poirot held it up, his voice triumphant. "Voilà, Hastings, a threat, hidden in plain sight. This, with the thread, the clock, the blooded, is a symphony of clues, and we are nearing the crescendo." As the clocks chimed 6, Poirot tucked the letter into his pocket, his mind already turning to the next step. The guests, unaware of his discoveries, gathered for dinner, their faces masks of politeness over a cauldron of secrets. Poirot, watching them, knew that the truth was close, hidden in the delicate balance of time and deception. Chapter 7. More lies surfaced. The clocks of Temporal Hall struck 7, their chimes weaving through the dining room where the guests sat, their faces taut with the strain of enforced civility. The absence of Sir Reginald Ashford cast a shadow over the meal, each clink of cutlery a reminder of the mystery that gripped the estate. Hercule Poirot, seated at the table's end, observed the gathering with his characteristic calm, his sharp eyes noting every glance, every hesitation. Captain Hastings, beside him, sensed the tension building, as though the house itself were holding its breath, waiting for the next revelation. Poirot had kept his latest discoveries, the silk thread, the threatening letter, and Miss Clara Beaumont's confession close to his chest, revealing them only to Hastings. The letter, with its ominous warning to pay what you owe, had deepened the puzzle, hinting at a motive rooted in betrayal or debt. The silk thread, caught in the clock's gears, pointed to someone's presence in the study after 11:45, when Clara had seen Sir Reginald alive, and the cry Hastings heard at 2:17 suggested a second event, one that Poirot was determined to unravel. That as the soup course was cleared, Poirot tapped his glass, drawing the guests' attention. Madame, et messieurs, he said, his voice smooth but commanding. This evening, we dine in the shadow of a mystery. Sir Reginald is missing, perhaps dead, and the clues they point to secrets among us. I invite you to share what you know, for the truth, it cannot hide forever. The room fell silent, the ticking of the mantel clock deafening. Lady Evelyn, her face pale, set down her wineglass with a trembling hand. Monsieur Poirot, this is unbearable. You speak of secrets, but what more can we say? We've told you our movements. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. And yet, Madame, the truth is like a clock, it requires all its gears to function. One of you, perhaps, has omitted a gear. Mr. Victor Crane, his face flushed from wine, scoffed. You're fishing, Poirot. If you've got something to say, spit it out. I'm tired of these games. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Monsieur Crane, your cigar ash, scattered in haste, suggests you were not as calm as you claim last night. And you, Monsieur Marsh, he turned to the solicitor, your briefcase, locked so tightly it speaks of secrets you guard with care. Julian Marsh's expression remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened around his fork. My briefcase contains client documents, as I've said, nothing more. Before Poirot could press further, Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth spoke, her voice low and deliberate. Monsieur Poirot, since you value candor, I'll offer some. Last night, when I stepped into the corridor around midnight, I saw Mr. Marsh leaving his room. He was carrying something, a folder. Perhaps he seemed furtive. Marsh's head snapped up, his composure cracking. That's absurd. I was in my room all night after 11:30. You're mistaken, Mrs. Wentworth. Mrs. Wentworth's eyes gleamed. I'm a writer. Mr. Marsh, I observed details. You were in the East Wing, near the study. The accusation hung in the air, and Poirot seized the moment. Monsieur Marsh, perhaps you can clarify. This folder, did it contain the letter I found, the one warning Sir Reginald to pay what he owes? A collective gasp rippled through the room. Marsh's face drained of color, but he recovered quickly. I know nothing of any letter. Mrs. Wentworth is spinning tales, as is her habit. Poirot nodded, unperturbed. We shall see, monsieur, but I note that secrets, they breed mistrust. And mistrust, it breeds lies. As the meal continued, the atmosphere grew brittle. Dr. Lionel Hurst, his nervous tapping more pronounced, spilled his wine, muttering an apology. Miss Clara Beaumont, her eyes downcast, toyed with her food, her earlier confession weighing heavily. Lady Evelyn excused herself briefly, claiming a need for air, but Poirot noted the quick glance she exchanged with Marsh before leaving. Hastings, watching the interplay, leaned toward Poirot. They're all hiding something, aren't they? Marsh's reaction to Mrs. Wentworth's claim it was too strong. Poirot nodded, his voice a whisper. Oui, mon ami, the solicitor. He is a man of control, but control cracks under pressure. And Mrs. Wentworth, she sees too much, yet reveals only what serves her. We must watch them all. After dinner, requested a private word with Lady Evelyn in the library. She entered, her elegance marred by exhaustion, and sat stiffly. Madame Poirot began. A letter, with the initials J.M. in your room. It suggests a connection to Monsieur Marsh. What is the nature of this connection? Lady Evelyn's eyes widened, but she composed herself. It was a business matter. Julian Mr. Marsh handles our estate affairs. The letter was about investments, nothing more. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. And yet, Madame, your husband spoke of betrayal to Mademoiselle Beaumont. Was this betrayal financial or personal? Her breath caught, and for a moment, her mask slipped. Reginald was under strain, she admitted. He believed someone was undermining his work, his legacy. He wouldn't say who, but it consumed him. Poirot leaned forward. And you, Madame, did you share this fear? She hesitated, then whispered, I feared for him. Yes, but I knew nothing of this horror. As she left, Poirot turned to Hastings, his expression grave. She speaks the truth, but not all of it. The letter, the betrayal, lit points to a motive deeper than money. We must look to the heart, Hastings. Later, as the guests retired, Poirot lingered in the library, examining Sir Reginald's collection of timepieces. One, a small pocket watch, caught his eye. Its case was engraved with the initials E.A. Evelyn Ashford. Unlike the others, it was wound but not running. Its hands stopped at 2:15. Poirot's fingers paused, his mind racing. Hastings, he said, this watch, it is personal. A gift, perhaps. and it stops at 2:15, close to the cry you heard. Another clue, or another deception. Hastings frowned. It could belong to Lady Evelyn, but why stop it? Poirot's eyes gleamed. To mark a moment, or to hide one. The clocks of this house, they are not mere machines, they are witnesses. And we, mon ami, must listen to their testimony. As the clocks chimed 10, Poirot tucked the watch into his pocket, his resolve firm. The lies were surfacing, each revelation a step closer to the truth. But the gears of the mystery were still turning, and Poirot knew the next turn would bring them closer to the heart of the crime. Chapter 8. The emotional turning point. The clocks of Temporal Hall struck midnight, their chimes resonating through the darkened corridors like a solemn requiem. The house, once a bastion of order, now felt like a pressure cooker, its inhabitants simmering under the weight of suspicion and fear. Hercule Poirot, seated in the library with Captain Hastings, reviewed the mounting clues. The blood-smeared desk, the stopped clock at 12:03, the silk thread, the threatening letter, and the pocket watch stopped at 2:15, so close to the cry Hastings had heard. Each piece was a gear in the intricate mechanism of the crime, and Poirot sensed that the moment for a breakthrough was near. The day had been fraught with tension. The guests, aware of Poirot's relentless probing, had grown increasingly guarded, their polite facades cracking under his scrutiny. Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth's accusation against Julian Marsh had ignited a spark of distrust, and Lady Evelyn's guarded admission of her husband's fears had deepened the mystery. Poirot, ever methodical, knew that to unravel the truth, he must push one of the suspects to the edge force, a revelation that would shift the balance. That as the household retired, Poirot summoned the guests to the drawing room for what he called a small discussion. The room, lit by the soft glow of a chandelier, was dominated by the ever-present ticking of clocks, their rhythm a relentless reminder of time's unyielding march. The guests entered warily, their faces a gallery of apprehension. Lady Evelyn sat rigidly, her hands clasped tightly. Victor Crane's bluster had dimmed, his eyes darting to the exits. Clara Beaumont clutched her necklace, her gaze distant. Dr. Lionel Hurst's nervous tapping had escalated to a near-constant fidgeting. Mrs. Wentworth, notebook in hand, observed with a writer's detachment, while Julian Marsh maintained his icy composure, though his fingers betrayed a slight tremor. Poirot stood before the fireplace, his small figure commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice calm but edged with steel. "We are at a crossroads. Sir Reginald Ashford is missing, perhaps dead, and the clues they point to a crime of passion, of betrayal. Yet each of you claims innocence. Each alibi a perfect tick of the clock. But clocks, they can lie, Nan, and so can people." He held up the pocket watch engraved with EA, its hands frozen at 2:15. "This watch, found among Sir Reginald's collection, it is stopped, like the clock in the study. Why? To mark a moment, or to hide one? And the cry Captain Hastings heard at 2:17, it suggests a truth that someone wishes to conceal." Lady Evelyn's breath hitched, her eyes fixed on the watch. Poirot turned to her, his gaze piercing. "Madame, this watch bears your initials. Was it a gift from your husband? And if so, why was it stopped, hidden among his treasures?" Her composure shattered. Lady Evelyn rose, her voice trembling. "It was a gift, yes, years ago, but I hadn't seen it in months. Reginald kept it in his collection, a reminder of happier times." Tears welled in her eyes, and she sank back into her chair, covering her face. "I swear, I don't know how it stopped, or why." The room was silent, save for the ticking clocks. Dr. Hurst, his face pale, spoke up, his voice unsteady. "Monsieur Poirot, you're upsetting her. Can't you see she's grieving?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Grieving, doctor, or hiding? Your sedatives, they were used by Lady Evelyn last night. Did you provide them, knowing they would ensure her sleep or her silence?" Hurst recoiled, his hands shaking. "I only advised her. As a physician, I had no part in this." Clara Beaumont, unable to contain herself, burst out, "Stop it, all of you. This is torture. I told you, I saw Sir Reginald alive at 11:45, and he was afraid. He spoke of betrayal, of debts. Why aren't we focusing on that?" Poirot turned to her, his expression softening. "Mademoiselle, your candor is noted, but fear, it is a mirror, it reflects many faces. Who did Sir Reginald fear? And why did you not speak of this fear sooner?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I was scared. I thought If I said too much, I'd be next. The admission hung in the air, a crack in the facade of the group's collective denial. Mrs. Wentworth, her pen poised, leaned forward. Monsieur Poirot, Clara's right. There's a pattern here, fear, secrets, debts. Sir Reginald wasn't just a collector of clocks. He was a collector of enemies. Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the room. Precisement, madame. And one of those enemies has acted. The silk thread in the clock, the threatening letter, the blood, they are not accidents. They are the work of a mind that plans, that deceives. Julian Marsh, silent until now, spoke, his voice cold. You're building a case on suppositions, Poirot. You've no proof, only trinkets and guesses. Poirot's smile was sharp. Monsieur Marsh, the proof, it is in the details. The letter in Lady Evelyn's room, initialed JM, it speaks of business, but also of trust broken. What business did you share with Sir Reginald that required such secrecy? Marsh's composure faltered, his eyes flashing with anger. I told you, it was estate matters, nothing more. But the room's tension had reached a breaking point. Lady Evelyn, her voice raw, stood again. Enough. I can't bear this, she cried. Reginald was not the man you think. He was obsessed, yes, but he was also afraid. He told me, weeks ago, that someone was threatening him, demanding money for a debt he swore he didn't owe. He wouldn't say who, but it consumed him. And now, she broke off, sobbing, and Dr. Hurst rushed to her side, his own nerves fraying. Poirot watched, his expression unreadable. Mercy, madame, your words, they are a key turning in the lock. A debt, a threat, a betrayal. These are the gears of our crime. And now, we are closer to the truth. As the guests dispersed, shaken by Lady Evelyn's outburst, Hastings whispered to Poirot, she's broken. Poirot, do you think she's telling the truth? Poirot's eyes gleamed. She tells the truth, Hastings, but not the whole truth. Her tears, they are real, but they hide something deeper. We must press on, for the clocks, they do not stop. The library grew quiet, save for the ticking of Sir Reginald's timepieces. Poirot sat, his fingers steepled, his mind tracing the delicate threads of motive and opportunity. The emotional turning point had come, and with it, a glimpse of the heart of the mystery. But the final truth, Poirot knew, lay just beyond the next chime. Chapter 9. The trap. The clocks of Temporal Hall struck 9 in the morning. Their chimes a relentless pulse through the heavy air of the estate. The previous night's emotional upheaval, marked by Lady Evelyn's tearful confession and the mounting suspicions among the guests, had left the household on edge. Hercule Poirot, ever the orchestrator of truth, sensed that the time had come to tighten the net. The cloister blood-smeared desk, the stopped clock at 12:03, the silk thread, the threatening letter, the pocket watch at 2:15, and the cry at 2:17 had formed a pattern in his mind, and he was ready to apply the psychological pressure that would force the guilty to falter. Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing-room, its chandelier casting a cold light over their strained faces. Captain Hastings stood by the door, his notebook ready, though he knew Poirot's method relied less on notes than on the subtle interplay of human nature. Sergeant Brooks, still clinging to his theory about Victor Crane, hovered nearby, his presence a minor irritation to the detective. The guests, Lady Evelyn, Crane, Clara Beaumont, Dr. Lionel Hurst, Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth, and Julian Marsh sat in a semicircle, their postures rigid, as though bracing for a storm. Madame et Messieurs, Poirot began, his voice a velvet blade. We are close to the truth. Sir Reginald Ashford is missing, perhaps dead, and the clues they point to a crime of calculation and passion. The blood, the stopped clock, the thread, the letter, the watch, they are pieces of a machine, and I, Hercule Poirot, am its engineer. Today, we shall see who among you has set this machine in motion. He paced slowly, his small figure commanding the room. Let us review. Sir Reginald was seen alive by Mademoiselle Beaumont at 11:45 in his study. The clock there stops at 12:03, with a silk thread caught in its gears. A thread, matching fabrics in this house. A letter threatens him to pay what he owes. A watch, engraved with Madame Ashford's initials, stops at 2:15. And Captain Hastings hears a cry at 2:17. These are not accidents, Nan. They are the work of a mind that plans, that deceives. Lady Evelyn clutched her handkerchief, her eyes red-rimmed. Crane shifted uncomfortably, his bravado muted. Clara's hands trembled. While Hurst's nervous tapping reached a fever pitch, Mrs. Wentworth's pen scratched softly, and Marsh's face remained a mask, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Poirot stopped before Crane. "Monsieur Crane, your argument with Sir Reginald was public. Your cigar ash scattered in haste. You claim to have been in the billiard room, yet the groundskeeper saw you near the garden at 11:45. Why?" Crane's face reddened. "I told you, I stepped out for air. The groundskeeper's wrong." Poirot turned to Marsh. "And you, Monsieur Marsh, with your locked briefcase and the letter initialed J.M. in Madame Ashford's room. You deny Mrs. Wentworth's claim that you were in the East Wing near midnight. Why so secretive?" Marsh's voice was cold. "I was in my room. Mrs. Wentworth is mistaken." Mrs. Wentworth's smile was sharp. "I know what I saw, Monsieur Poirot. A folder, a furtive step. Mr. Marsh was not where he claims." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "Enough. Let us consider another possibility. The watch stopped at 2:15, so close to the cry at 2:17. Madame Ashford, you say this watch was a gift, long untouched, yet it was found among Sir Reginald's collection. Stopped. Did you, perhaps, visit the study that night?" Lady Evelyn gasped, her voice breaking. "No, I was asleep, as I told you. The sedative Poirot interrupted, turning to Hurst. "Provided by you, doctor, or merely advised? Your nerves, they betray a man who knows more than he says." Hurst's hands shook violently. I only helped her sleep. I swear, I know nothing of this." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And yet, someone was in the study after 11:45. Someone stopped the clock, left the thread, spilled the blood. Someone heard, or caused, the cry at 2:17. I propose a test, Miss Amos. Let us return to the study, now, and recreate the moment." The guests exchanged wary glances but followed Poirot to the study, where the blood-smeared desk and stopped clock awaited. Poirot positioned himself by the clock, holding the pocket watch. "At 2:13, the clock stops. At 2:15, this watch stops. At 2:17, a cry. Let us imagine. Sir Reginald is here, working. Someone enters. There is a struggle, blood, a torn fob. The clock is stopped, perhaps to mark the time, perhaps to mislead. But the cry, it comes later. Why?" He turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle, you saw Sir Reginald at 11:45, agitated. Did you return later?" Clara shook her head, tears streaming. "No, I swear. I went to bed." Poirot's gaze shifted to Hurst. "Doctor, your room is near the study. Did you hear the cry?" Hurst stammered. I was asleep. I took a sedative myself." Poirot clapped his hands, the sound sharp. "And there, Miss Amos, is the lie. A sedative, taken by two of you, yet a cry pierces the night. Someone was awake. Someone was here. I say it was a trap, set to confuse the timeline, to make us believe the crime occurred at 12:03, when in truth, it was later." He held up the threatening letter. "This letter speaks of a debt. Sir Reginald feared betrayal. Who among you demanded payment? Who stood to lose if he lived?" The room erupted in protests, but Poirot's voice cut through. "Silence. The truth is near, and one of you will break. I see it in your eyes, the guilt, the fear. Speak now, or I shall reveal you." Dr. Hurst, his face ashen, collapsed into a chair, his hands covering his face. I can't go on like this," he cried. "I didn't kill him, but I knew he was in trouble. He came to me a week ago, said someone was blackmailing him. He wouldn't say who, but he was terrified. I gave him a sedative to calm him, but I swear, I didn't hurt him." The admission stunned the room. Lady Evelyn sobbed. Crane swore under his breath, and Marsh's mask slipped, his eyes narrowing. Mrs. Wentworth's pen froze, and Clara clutched her necklace, her breath ragged. Poirot nodded, his expression grim. "Mercy, doctor. Your truth, it is a step forward. But the trap, it is not yet sprung. Tomorrow we shall gather again, and the final piece will fall into place." As the guests dispersed, Hastings whispered Poirot, "Hurst's confession, it changes everything." Blackmail. Poirot's smile was faint. "It changes much, but not all. Mon ami. The clocks, they tick toward the truth, and we shall hear their final chime soon." The house settled into an uneasy silence, the clocks marking the hours until the inevitable revelation. Chapter 10. The reveal. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Temporal Hall's drawing room, casting a pale glow over the assembled guests. The clocks, ever present, struck 10, their chimes a solemn prelude to the climax. Hercule Poirot had orchestrated. The air was thick with anticipation, the guests' faces etched with dread and curiosity. Captain Hastings, standing by Poirot's side, felt his heart race, knowing his friend was about to unveil the truth behind Sir Reginald Ashford's disappearance. The blood-smeared desk, the stopped clock at 12:03, the silk thread, the threatening letter, the pocket watch at 2:15, and the cry at 2:17 had led to this moment, and Poirot's little grey cells were ready to lay bare the intricate machinery of the crime. Poirot stood before the fireplace, his small figure radiating authority. "Madame et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate. "We have gathered to uncover the truth of Sir Reginald Ashford's fate. A crime has been committed, a crime of cunning and deception, hidden behind the ticking of clocks. But time, it reveals all, and I, Hercule Poirot, have listened." The guests, Lady Evelyn, Victor Crane, Clara Beaumont, Dr. Lionel Hurst, Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth, and Julian Marsh sat rigidly, their eyes fixed on Poirot. Sergeant Brooks, relegated to the sidelines, clutched his notepad, his earlier certainty about Crane now tempered by doubt. Poirot held up the broken watch fob. "Let us begin with the clues. This fob, torn in a struggle, found in the study with blood, and a clock stopped at 12:03. A silk thread, caught in the clock's gears, points to someone's presence. A letter warns Sir Reginald to pay what he owes. A watch, engraved with EA stops at 2:15, and Captain Hastings hears a cry at 2:17. These are the gears of our mystery, and they turn in unison." He turned to Clara Beaumont. "Mademoiselle, you saw Sir Reginald alive at 11:45, agitated, speaking of betrayal. This sets our stage. The clock at 12:03, it was stopped deliberately to mislead us about the time of the crime. The true moment, it is later, marked by the cry at 2:17. Clara's hands trembled, but she nodded. Poirot continued, holding up the threatening letter. "This letter speaks of a debt, a blackmail. Dr. Hurst, you confirmed Sir Reginald's fear of this threat, but who made it?" Hurst, his face ashen, shook his head. "I told you, I don't know." Poirot's gaze shifted to Lady Evelyn. "Madame, your watch, stopped at 2:15, was found among Sir Reginald's collection. You claim it was a gift, untouched for months, yet it was wound, stopped deliberately. Why?" Lady Evelyn's voice broke. "I don't know. I swear, I was asleep." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And there, madame, is the lie. Let us reconstruct. Sir Reginald, obsessed with time, was in his study at 11:45. Someone entered, argued, perhaps struggled. The fob tears, blood spills. The clock is stopped at 12:03 to create a false timeline. But the true crime occurs later, near to 17, when the cry is heard." He turned to Julian Marsh. "Monsieur Marsh, your briefcase, your secrecy, the letter initialed JM, they point to you. You were seen by Mrs. Wentworth near the study at midnight. You were Sir Reginald's solicitor, privy to his affairs. He owed a debt, but not of money, of trust. You betrayed him." Marsh's face paled, but he remained silent. Poirot pressed on. "Sir Reginald discovered you were falsifying estate documents, siphoning funds. The letter in Lady Evelyn's room, it was your warning to him, disguised as business. But he refused to pay, and so you acted." The room gasped. Marsh stood, his voice icy. "You have no proof, Poirot. This is speculation." Poirot held up the silk thread. "This thread, monsieur, matches the lining of your gloves, found in your room. You tampered with the clock to mislead us. But you made a mistake. The watch, stopped at 2:15, was not yours, it was Lady Evelyn's, taken by you to implicate her." Lady Evelyn cried out, "No, I had no part in this." Poirot raised a hand. "Nan, madame, you did not, but you suspected. You knew of Marsh's dealings, and you kept silent, fearing scandal. Your sedative, provided by Dr. Hurst, ensured you slept through the cry at 2:17, but you awoke earlier, at 2:15, and saw something. Lady Evelyn sobbed, nodding. "I saw a shadow in the corridor, near the study. I thought it was a dream. The sedative, I didn't know." Poirot turned back to Marsh. "You killed Sir Reginald, monsieur, in the study at 2:15. A blow to The head, quick and silent, with the trowel found in the shed. You moved his body, hid it in the woods, and planted the handkerchief to mislead. The cry at 2:17 was your accomplice, Dr. Hurst, who knew of your plan and covered for you with sedatives. Hurst collapsed, sobbing. I didn't kill him. I only helped hide the body. Marsh threatened me, said he'd ruin me. Marsh lunged forward, but Brooks restrained him. Poirot continued, his voice relentless. You stopped the watch at 2:15 to confuse the timeline, but the cry, it was your mistake. Hurst's panic as he moved the body. The clocks, they betrayed you. The room was silent, save for Hurst's sobs and Marsh's heavy breathing. Poirot stepped back, his expression solemn. The body, it lies in the woods, near the old oak. Sergeant Brooks, you will find it. Brooks, stunned, nodded and dispatched men to search. Within the hour, they returned, confirming Sir Reginald's body, hidden under brush, a wound to his head. Marsh, his composure shattered, confessed under pressure, admitting to the blackmail and murder, with Hurst as his reluctant accomplice. As the guests reeled, Poirot turned to Hastings. Mon ami, the clocks, they spoke the truth. Time, it always reveals. The clocks chimed 11, their sound a final note in the symphony of justice. As Marsh and Hurst were led away, the mystery of Temporal Hall resolved by Poirot's unerring logic. Chapter 11. The reflection. The clocks of Temporal Hall struck noon, their chimes a subdued echo in the wake of the morning's dramatic revelation. The drawing-room, once a stage for suspicion and deceit, now held an air of quiet resolution. Hercule Poirot stood by the window, his small figure framed against the grey Kentish sky, his eyes distant yet contemplative. Captain Hastings, seated nearby, watched his friend with a mix of awe and relief. The weight of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder finally lifted by Poirot's masterful unravelling of the truth. The guests, or what remained of the gathering, sat in scattered silence. Lady Evelyn, her face drawn with grief, clutched a handkerchief, her eyes red from tears shed for her husband and the betrayal she had unwittingly harboured. Clara Beaumont, her youthful curiosity dimmed, stared at the floor, her necklace still clutched tightly. Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth, her notebook closed for once, observed the scene with a writer's detachment, though even she seemed subdued. Victor Crane, cleared of suspicion, but shaken by the ordeal, sipped a brandy, his usual bravado absent. Julian Marsh and Dr. Lionel Hurst, now in the custody of Sergeant Brooks, had been taken to the village police station, their confessions sealing their fate. Poirot turned from the window, his moustache impeccably waxed despite the turmoil, and addressed the room. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice soft but resonant. The affair of Temporal Hall is concluded. Sir Reginald Ashford, a man of precision and passion, was taken from us by greed and betrayal. But the truth, it is like the ticking of these clocks, it cannot be silenced. Hastings, ever eager to understand his friend's methods, leaned forward. Poirot, how did you know it was Marsh? The clues, they pointed everywhere. Poirot's eyes twinkled, a rare moment of indulgence. Mon ami, the clues, they are the notes of a symphony, but only when played in order do they sing. The stopped clock at 12:03 was a lie, a misdirection to confuse the timeline. The silk thread, caught in its gears, matched Marsh's gloves, a detail too precise to be chance. The threatening letter, initialed J.M., spoke of a debt, and Marsh, as solicitor, held Sir Reginald's trust and betrayed it. He paced, slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. The pocket watch, stopped at 2:15, was a clever touch, meant to implicate Madame Ashford, but it was wound, not broken, and placed among Sir Reginald's collection by Marsh to sow doubt. The cry at 2:17, heard by you, Hastings, was Dr. Hurst's panic as he helped move the body, a mistake that betrayed their plan. Lady Evelyn, her voice barely a whisper, spoke up. Monsieur Poirot, I should have known. Reginald told me of his fears, but I thought it was his obsession with time, not a real threat. Poirot's expression softened. Madame, the heart, it blinds us to what the mind might see. You loved your husband, and that love made you trust. But trust, it can be a dangerous thing. Clara Beaumont, her voice trembling, asked, but why, Monsieur Poirot, why did they do it? Poirot turned to her, his gaze steady. Mademoiselle, greed is a clock that ticks in many hearts. Marsh, he saw in Sir Reginald's wealth an opportunity to enrich himself, falsifying documents to siphon funds. When Sir Reginald discovered this, Marsh demanded payment to keep Salenta blackmail. But Sir Reginald, a man of principle, refused, and so Marsh struck, with Hurst as his reluctant ally, bound by his own secrets. Mrs. Wentworth, her curiosity reignited, leaned forward, and the clocks, Monsieur Poirot, they seemed to rule this house, even in death. Poirot nodded, his voice taking on a philosophical tone. The clocks, madame, they are the soul of Temporal Hall. Sir Reginald lived by them, and in their precision I found the truth. They marked the moments of deception, the stopped clock, the watch, but they also marked the truth, for time, it always reveals. Hercule Poirot, he listens to the rhythm of life, and in that rhythm, he finds order. Hastings, moved by his friend's words, ventured, "You always say it's the little grey cells, Poirot, but it's more than that. It's understanding people, isn't it?" Poirot's smile was faint but warm. "Oui, mon ami. The mind, it sees the clues, but the heart, it understands the motives. Without both, there is no justice." As the guests absorbed his words, Poirot announced his departure. "My work here is done. The police, they will handle the rest. I return to London, where other mysteries await." Lady Evelyn rose, her voice choked with emotion. "Monsieur Poirot, how can we thank you? You've given us the truth, though it pains us." Poirot bowed slightly. "The truth, madame, it is its own reward. Adieu." As he and Hastings prepared to leave, the clocks chimed one, their sound of final farewell. Poirot paused at the door, glancing back at the drawing-room, where the remaining guests sat in quiet reflection. "Hastings," he said softly, "this house, it is a reminder that time, it is both friend and foe. We must use it wisely." They stepped into the waiting car, the estate fading behind them. Hastings, looking back, felt a pang of melancholy for the lives forever changed within Temporal Hall, but he knew that Poirot, with his unerring logic and quiet compassion, had brought order to chaos, as only he could. The clocks ticked on, marking the passage of time, but for Hercule Poirot, the mystery was closed, and the truth, like a perfectly wound timepiece, had been set right. Chapter 12. The quiet exit. The afternoon sun hung low over Temporal Hall, casting long shadows across the Kentish countryside as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings prepared to depart. The clocks, though still ticking with their relentless precision, seemed quieter now, as if the resolution of Sir Reginald Ashford's murder had eased their burden. The estate, once a stage for deception and tragedy, stood in mournful silence, its grandeur tarnished by the truth Poirot had uncovered. In the drawing-room, the remaining guests, Lady Evelyn, Clara Beaumont, Victor Crane, and Mrs. Dorothy Wentworth, gathered for a final farewell. Julian Marsh and Dr. Lionel Hurst, now in the hands of the authorities, had left a void, their absence a stark reminder of the cost of greed and betrayal. Sergeant Brooks, bustling about with newfound purpose, coordinated with the village police, his earlier bluster replaced by a grudging respect for Poirot's genius. Poirot stood by the fireplace, his small figure immaculate in his tailored suit, his moustache waxed to perfection. His green eyes, sharp and reflective, surveyed the room one last time. Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him, his notebook tucked away, his heart heavy with the weight of the case's conclusion. The air was thick with unspoken gratitude and lingering sorrow. "Mesdames et Messieurs," Poirot began, his voice calm and measured, "the affair of Temporal Hall is at an end. Sir Reginald Ashford, a man who lived by the tick of the clock, was taken by a crime of calculation. But the truth, it is like time itself, inevitable. With the aid of my little grey cells, we have restored order." Lady Evelyn, her face etched with grief, rose unsteadily. "Monsieur Poirot, you have given us justice, but at such a cost. Reginald, he was not perfect, but he deserved better than this." Poirot bowed slightly, his expression softening. "Madame, no man is perfect, but every man deserves truth. Your husband's passion for time was his legacy, and in solving this crime, I have honored it." Clara Beaumont, her youthful spirit subdued, clutched her necklace and spoke softly. "I'll never forget this, Monsieur Poirot. You saw what we couldn't, what I couldn't. I thought I knew Sir Reginald, but I was blind to the darkness around him." Poirot's gaze was kind but piercing. "Mademoiselle, the young see with hope, and hope can blind. But you were brave to speak of his fear. That courage helped uncover the truth." Mrs. Wentworth, her notebook resting in her lap, offered a wry smile. "Monsieur Poirot, you've given me a story I could never invent. A house of clocks, a hidden crime, a mind like yours, it's a tale for the ages. Poirot's moustache twitched with amusement. Madame, you may write it, but I trust you will disguise the names. The truth, it is enough without embellishment. Victor Crane, his earlier bravado, softened by humility, cleared his throat. Poirot, I misjudged. You thought you were all talk, but you saw right through us. I'm glad I wasn't the one you pinned. Poirot's smile was faint. Monsieur Crane, your bluster, it is loud, but your heart, it is not cruel. Be mindful of your ambitions, they can lead to dangerous paths. As the guests absorbed his words, Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. Mon ami, this case, it reminds us that time is both a gift and a judge. Sir Reginald sought to master it, but in the end, it mastered him. We must learn from this. Hastings nodded, moved by his friend's wisdom. You're right, Poirot. It's not just about solving the crime, it's about understanding why it happened. Marsh's greed, Hurst's weakness. It's all so human. Poirot clapped Hastings on the shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. Exactement. The clues, they are the map, but the motives, they are the journey. Come, we must go. They stepped outside, where a car waited to take them to the station. The grounds of Temporal Hall, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, seemed almost peaceful, as if the estate were reclaiming its dignity. Poirot paused, glancing back at the ivy-clad walls, the windows reflecting the fading sun. Hastings, he said softly, this house, it is a monument to time, but also to human folly. Sir Reginald built a world of order, yet chaos found him. We, who seek justice, must be vigilant, for chaos is never far. As they climbed into the car, Hastings looked back one last time. Do you think they'll be all right, Poirot? Lady Evelyn, Clara, the others. Poirot's eyes were distant. They will heal, mon ami, as time heals all, but they will carry this moment, like a clock that never stops ticking. The car pulled away, the sound of the engine blending with the faint chime of a distant clock, striking for Temporal Hall, receded into the distance, its secrets laid bare, its wounds beginning to mend. Hercule Poirot, the master of order, had once again brought light to the shadows, and as the countryside rolled past, he sat in quiet contemplation, ready for the next mystery that time would bring.